What's up, everybody? This is Zoya, the Russian Korean, and today we're talking about marriage. Specifically about just like my thoughts on marriage now that I've been married for a little bit, and just how even this short time has changed me from, the time when I was single to, me now being married. Now, these questions, I think they came up a few times during my streams, so I thought that because they come up fairly frequently, I thought it would be nice to actually make a video about this. Also, I haven't made a vlog in a while, so I think this is ripe time for this kind of content. One thing for sure, though, is that this is not a husband review video, okay? But I will talk about him quite a lot, I guess, because in the marriage, it's like two people. So I guess you'll get to know him a little bit better through this video. But yeah, what I wanted to talk about is just how marriage has changed me and also why I got married. And so before I really talk about anything else, I have to say that my lookout on marriage, my philosophy on it, and basically how I approach it is very heavily tied to my faith, which is Christian. And so I will talk a lot about some of the Christian concepts that I apply to my marriage and that I think are very useful and that actually help our marriage to grow, even though, every marriage has its own difficulties, right? And its own obstacles. And it's not easy, okay? I'm just gonna say it right away. It's not easy. But at the same time, you can make it better and you can make it fun if you have the right approach. Now, I'm not saying that I have like the best approach in the world, but I'll just share it with you, and you can make of it what you want. All right, so let's start out. Of course, it's not a secret that I'm married. I think a lot of people get surprised when I'm playing a game, right, or something, and they think I'm like a teenager in high school, and then you start talking about my husband, and they're like, bruh. But yeah, even though some people think I look like I'm in high school, which I personally don't think so. Yeah, I am way past high school. Past college, okay, past grad school. That's how old I am. And yes, I've been married for the last 3 years, at least as of the publishing of this video. And actually, next week is going to be our anniversary. So that makes, I guess, this video very timely. So here's my plan for this vlog. First, I'll talk about some of the things that people say, right, about marriage and what I personally think about that. Then I'll talk about marrying young and how that has been working out for us so far. And then I'll talk about the principles behind our marriage and also how that basically has changed me, even in this short period of time. Okay, so first things first. I personally think, at least from my experience, and tell me if in your country or wherever you live, if it's different, but I think marriage is not very well presented or taught to younger generations. At least like, that's how I feel about it. And the reason why I'm saying this is because usually when you see like portrayals of marriage on TV or, even like in your own life here and there, you kind of get this feeling that it's either very difficult or it almost never works out, or it's very rare that it works out. It like many people see, the divorce rates, or in their own family there are divorces, or somebody tells them that it's not going to work out, So with that, I feel like there's a lot of discouragement in the world out there for younger people to basically kind of not want to get married because they feel like it's going to make their life harder. And that's the thing, making your life harder. Like, for some reason, that's a virtue. Like, recently it's become a virtue to not engage in things that will make your life harder. It's not about whether it will make your life better, right? But it's about making it easier. So in a lot of cases, an easier life is like a life where you just do what you want, where you do what benefits you, and you don't have to have this other person next to you constantly like asking for their needs to be met, or for you to take care of them, or for you to prioritize them over yourself. Like, of course, that's very inconvenient if you look at it from that perspective. And I think a lot of the advice that, like, the worldly advice, okay, I would call that worldly advice, that I see like on Instagram, on Facebook, or I used to have Facebook, but I don't have it anymore. But I used to see that stuff. And also you can even find it on YouTube and other places, like people talking about it, these like dating coaches, whatever. And when they talk about this stuff, they basically say you need somebody who will not change you. You need to prioritize your happiness and your comfort. And if that person is forcing you out of that, then that's like a red flag. That's not good. And while I understand what they're trying to say, they're basically trying to say that you shouldn't engage in like toxic relationships where you basically have to completely give yourself up and just do everything for the other person, even though they're very selfishly demanding everything for themselves. Like, yes, that's a toxic relationship and you probably shouldn't be in that. But I think in many ways, they actually present it in such a way that it kind of looks like no matter what relationship you're in, it should always be to your benefit. Like if you want to get married, you should have common interests. You should have common hobbies. You should have common this, common that. And actually, they should be you. You should marry yourself. All these things that are thrown at you, and I'm sure you've heard of all these, right? Like I'm sure you've heard at least one of these things before. But all of these things that are being thrown at people, I think they really mislead a lot of people into thinking about marriage in a way that's kind of not very healthy. I will touch on this later, but I will talk about marrying young and how that kind of defies that kind of mentality, because I think the kind of more of a self-centered mentality makes you, and it's not necessarily like that bad, but I think it does delay or if not absolutely prevent marriage from happening. Because of all these other requirements that you have in your mind. And like you have those requirements not because you actually want them, but because people told you. Like people told me things, how my future husband is supposed to be, and like how you know that this boyfriend, that boyfriend is like the one, you know, like all these things, you have them in your head, and then you start thinking that that is actually truth, that is how it's supposed to work. And when you, like, for me, I realized that half of that stuff, if not like most of it, is just completely wrong. I'll explain why I even got to that conclusion. But basically, the world teaches you all sorts of kinds of things. It's, the advice out there is mostly very self-centered. And I think not the best if you actually want to have a productive and long-lasting marriage. So marriage as a skill in popular culture, I don't think it's very well taught. I think the one thing that also contributes to this kind of thinking, let me give you an example. Let's say you want to consult with someone on starting a new business. Let's say you want to open a restaurant. And who are you going to consult with? Because you yourself don't have the experience, so you want some advice. Who are you going to go to? Are you going to go to someone who failed to open a restaurant? And they will tell you, oh, you shouldn't open a restaurant. It's a bad idea. You'll waste a lot of money, just like I did. Don't do it. Is that where you're going to stop? Or if you want to open a restaurant, what you should do is you should go to someone who was successful at it and ask them. So what were the difficulties? How did you overcome? How did you get the successful business started and still have it? And they will share with you their experience. They'll share, you know, things that were difficult, things that the decisions that they made. And I think it'll be a lot more helpful for you than going to someone who has failed at opening a restaurant and taking that advice and being like, okay, that is the word of the day. I'm not going to consult anyone else. I think that's enough for me. I'm not going to start a business. I'm just going to do something else. Like clearly that's not the right approach if you want to start something and be successful at it. You can apply that to marriage as well. And I think the problem is that many people, they go to consult people who have failed, right? Or who have never done it, or who are afraid. Right. And they go to them and they get all this really bad, scary advice. It didn't work for them, and they will tell you how awful it was and why you shouldn't do it. Right. So people go to those kinds of sources for advice. And I just don't think it's a good idea. You know, just it's common sense. You don't go to someone who's failed to achieve something. So if you want to have a marriage that succeeds, that works out, you need to go to someone who actually has a working marriage. It doesn't have to be necessarily someone who's really old. It definitely would be a good thing to go to someone who's older and consult with them, ask what were difficulties, how was it, and what would you advise for someone like me, but also even someone who's young, who got married and who seems like they're working out, just ask them, how's it going? What do you do? What makes it work? Or what are you struggling with, and just getting advice from those people that are either trying or have succeeded or are successful at it so far. Like that would probably increase the chances of success for your own marriage or your own enterprise a lot more than going to someone who has failed or who has never tried it before. And that, I think, was a very positive thing for me and my husband, because before we got married, we talked and consulted with different couples that were together for a very long time, at least 25 years or over, and I also had the example of my own family, my own parents. He had the example of his parents. And so, of course, that is, I think, a really good backbone for a successful new marriage. So that's something that I would suggest, I guess, for those of you who are thinking about it or are considering it, is instead of going to examples that failed, even if it is within your own family, is not to be that discouraged, but to know that it's still possible for you and you can make it work, and you are not set to repeat the mistakes of generations past. And you are not paying for the sins of your fathers or mothers, and you can do it right. But if you want to do it right, you need to go to the sources that will show you how to do it right. And even now still, and I hope so that it will continue in the future, I'm learning from the married couples around me and how they work it out. I ask them for advice, and it works. It works. It really helps. And the other two things I want to mention, number one is that I think there is a concept out there that many people have grown to believe recently, is that love is something that's temporary. Love is a feeling that you have sometimes and sometimes you don't. And it can be there and it can disappear, right? And it's very complex, right? It's very hard to actually pinpoint whether that's true or not. But when it comes to marriage, I believe that thinking that love is temporary is actually kind of bad. That's not the approach that you should have. Personally, that's what I think. So when it comes to marriage, I think love, right, absolutely has to be considered and absolutely has to be one of the determining factors. However, it depends on what you define as love. And a lot of times what people define as love is this feeling that you have, right? This romantic attraction to somebody. And so when it disappears, the marriage is over, okay? I don't love you anymore. I don't want to be married to you anymore. And that kind of stuff starts happening. And so I think, yes, while love definitely is one of the defining pillars of marriage, I wouldn't define it as a feeling. I would define it as something else. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But to summarize, 1, marriage as a skill is not taught very well popularly. 2, the concept of love being temporary is also very widespread, and I think it's a little bit detrimental to actually sustaining a long-term marriage. And 3, like I was saying, there is this I think tendency to avoid responsibility. It's not that people don't want to be responsible. I think that avoiding responsibility in a way has almost become a virtue. It's like if you get married and you commit to someone, then people say that, oh, you've locked yourself down, you're not free anymore, bye-bye. There are jokes of people holding funerals for their friends because they know that, okay, once they get married, they're gone, that kind of stuff. It's a joke, of course, but every joke has a bit of truth to it. If there weren't any truth to the joke, then it wouldn't be funny. So there is that concept there too of responsibility being a huge burden, which it sure is. Responsibility, it's not easy and it's not something to be taken lightly. But what I want to convey to you guys through this video is that I personally think that committing and not avoiding responsibility is actually not that bad. And it doesn't pin you down in any way. And it also it's also actually making your life more meaningful. Wow, we're getting deep here. We're talking deep here. Okay, so now that I've talked about that, I want to touch on some of the principles behind marriage that my husband and I personally have adapted, and that actually put us in this position, like made us marry in the first place, and then that sustain us through these years so far, and hopefully for many years to come in the future. So like I said, my lookout on marriage is heavily influenced and shaped by my faith, which is the Christian faith. And I think a lot of times there's a lot of confusion about what the Christian approach to marriage is. I think many people think that Christian marriage equals don't cheat on each other. Like, basically that's it. But there's so much more to that. And that's something that I want to share with you. So when I talk about the Christian approach, I mean, there could be many different implications. So I will switch, I guess, to talking about more of a biblical approach, because Christianity is based on the Bible, right? And the Bible is like the guiding principle for the faith. And so for me also, when it comes to marriage, it's more about not just like being culturally Christian or something, but it's about actually doing the biblical thing, or what the Bible says. And in the Bible, there are lots of places that talk about marriage, and maybe you've heard some of those things, but you know, the most fundamental thing that you need to know is in the very beginning. You know, it's the book of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, and there is a second chapter, and there it talks about the man leaving his mother and father, so his parents, to unite to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And that means, it's like a good way to think about it is that it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's more like 1/2 + 1/2 = 1. So to me, like when I used to be single, like, yeah, I was my own person, and it's not like I had to get married. In fact, in Christianity, like, of course, marriage is good and you're encouraged to marry, but if you are called to celibacy or you're called to singleness, like you're just not gonna get married, then that's totally fine. It's not like you are this incomplete person. You are a complete person, but if you do decide to get married, it's not, you need to approach it as not this one and then two together, but it's 1/2 and 1/2 = 1 person. So in many ways, if you've watched any of your relatives or some of your friends maybe who have been married for a long time, it almost feels like they're one person, because they complete each other in like weird ways. Perhaps that's why also people say opposites attract, because yeah, it's like this side of it and then this side of it, and then when they come together, there's this yin and yang, there's this harmony. But anyways, what does that mean? Becoming one flesh. That means that when you do get married, you make a contract with each other. And in biblical language, we call it covenant, right? It's like an old word for like a contract, right? But it's more than just a contract. It's not like, oh, I'm signing a lease or something. It's a lot more than that. There is this lifetime commitment when it comes to a covenant. And that's basically what it is. You make a covenant with your partner. And it's not just a covenant, it's actually a holy covenant, which means it's a covenant where it's a very exclusive covenant, meaning that in order for you to enter into it, you do have to exclude other things. You have to give up relationships with other people when you get married. You have to give up a lot of maybe your old habits that you used to have and you could get away with them because no one else cared, but now you have another person next to you and maybe they don't like them, or maybe you need to change them in order for you to live better together. And then when you have a family with each other, then you both contribute to the family. It's not just one person kind of hauling everybody after themselves. So that's one side of the covenant, but personally, I think there is a different side to it, which is how you approach the other person. So for me, right, my husband is not just my husband. Because I'm married to him, he is also now my best friend. We have a lot of fun together, and maybe you've seen some of the streams where he shows up. He doesn't show his face, but he just shows up and completely like messes up my stream and wants me to 1v1 him and like howling abyss or something. But anyway, best friends, you get the idea. In addition to being my best friend, he's also my lover. And we're not gonna get into the details of that. But let's just say the romantic aspect is certainly there. However, maybe some people think that something is romantic and other people don't. To me, sometimes going fishing is pretty romantic, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's really difficult and frustrating. He's also my best partner in crime. Now, we're not criminals, okay? That's not what I'm trying to say. But when we do things together, and it's actually a lot nicer to have two two brains working on something, you know? Like when I was single and I used to like do everything, I used to just do everything by myself. Like I really hated group projects. I really didn't like having to cooperate with other people. It was like the worst thing because I didn't want to rely on anyone else because I knew that I would do my best, but I didn't know that, other people would do their best, and certainly not always they did their best. And so after those experiences, like I always wanted to like solo everything. But now that I've been married, like I realize how going solo, even though sometimes it works, like now most of the time, like I don't want to do things solo. Like I actually want his advice, his opinion, and then we can work it out together and like bounce ideas off of each other and then, make the best decision that we believe is good at the moment. So for me, when it comes to a covenant, I'm making this one person my spouse, my friend, my lover, my advisor, and just companion for life. Now that entails also me learning the concept of selflessness. So I've seen different shows, and it's not just shows, like I've actually seen that happen in real life, is that these two people are just madly in love with each other, right? And they're like, okay, we're gonna get married, and then they get married, and then like literally 3 weeks later, not even 3 weeks, like even shorter than that, they are just fighting nonstop. And the reason why is because once you get married, actually your personal decisions do impact your partner. So it's not like you can just like, do whatever. They're just going to let you do it, right? Or they're going to do something and it's going to tick you off. You can't continue as, your own kind of selfish person because again, it's not 1 + 1, it's a half plus a half equals 1, right? And so now you have to find a way to live together and to make it work. And this is where the concept of the covenant really comes in, is because everybody is going to have conflict at some point in their marriage. If you don't have any conflict at all, I don't think that's a good sign because it just means that someone is conceding something. Like someone is not saying something in order to please the other person or to appease the other person. And so the lack of conflict is actually avoiding conflict, but whatever is being held inside, it's still there. And I don't think that's good. So yes, there should be some conflict. There should be, you should butt heads with each other sometimes, because you have your ideas, he has or she has their own ideas, and then you need to figure it out. You need to find a way to kind of meet each other at a certain place. But when that happens, if you don't have the covenant backing you up, it's very easy for people to just kind of fall off, not stay in the relationship. And that's what I think I would call it the world would recommend, is like, don't get married, just date each other for like 5-10 years. And then if you've lived through that, that means that you can get married. And I think a lot of people actually believe that that's the best way to go. Like live with a person, or maybe a few people, like live with this person for a year and that person, date this person, that person. And then you need like at least a few years to get to know them, and then live together. And then at some point you're going to be ready to get married. And that was not the case for me at all. So just to give you a little bit of background, my husband and I were just friends for, I don't know, like 2.5 or 3 years, just friends, like nothing at all, no relationship. Then we started dating. And then after we started dating, like, I don't know, like 6 months later, we got married. We never lived together for several years. And honestly, when I got married to him, like, yeah, although I was friends with him for some time, it wasn't like close friends or anything. We were just at first like acquaintances and then a little bit of friends here and there. But it wasn't really like we were spending time with each other 24/7 or something. It definitely wasn't like that. And so when I got married to him, there were lots of things that I did not know about him that came up once we got married. And like, yeah, now I am in a relationship and like, I can't get out. He can't get out either. I'm sure he learned a lot of stuff about me that he didn't know. But what made it work, and what still makes it work, is that although there might be times when we fight with each other, or we disagree, or he does something that I don't like, or I do something that he doesn't like, and we express it to each other. Anyway, when that happens, the covenant is there to back us up. So we can maybe just like, distance ourselves a little bit, give each other some space, some time to think, and then at some point come back together and be like, okay, let's talk, and the fact that we're married to each other helps us actually, because we know that this is for life, and this is one life that we have, and this is the one other person that I'm committed to. We have to make it work. It forces us to put our own selfish wants behind. Like for me, when something happens and I believe that I didn't do anything wrong, but he gets upset about something that I've done, I need to consider, just take a step back and think, okay, why did he say that? Why did he get upset? And then kind of try to figure it out, not just well, I did nothing wrong and be in that defensive stance the entire time, but actually try to put myself in his shoes. And, once I can figure that out, even though, apologizing and coming out and saying, yeah, I was wrong is very hard, because this is a marriage, I am willing to be this vulnerable and also this open before this one other person. And I do it, and it usually, because he is also in a covenant with me, he's not going to be like, well, I'm not going to forgive you, blah, blah, blah. He actually never has done that. Whenever I admit that I did something wrong, and I've done many things wrong, but whenever I've done that, he would always forgive me and say, that's good. And then we don't talk about it anymore, and we forgive, and we move on, Next time something similar comes up, it's a lot easier for me to admit that I was wrong, because, oh, I know that I've done it already. Or for him to get not as upset, because he would be like, really? So we're kind of not so upset and serious about this anymore. And it's true the other way around. He does something wrong, I get upset, and then he doesn't want to admit it, and then finally he admits it, and then I'm totally fine. I'm totally willing and happy to forgive and just move on, and it'll be fine in the future. And honestly, when they say that the first year is the hardest, that's totally true. The first year is the hardest. And then it gets with each year, it just gets easier and easier. If you're actually doing your part, it gets easier. Another biblical concept of marriage is, I would call it servant partnership. So when people think of a servant, they think of somebody who serves you tea or something at a hotel. Maybe it doesn't sound that great, but what I mean by servant is basically someone who is there to help you, who's there to listen to you and assist you with whatever you're struggling with. Put their own needs behind themselves and put your needs first. But it's not just a servitude, right? Because if there's servitude, that means that somebody is served and somebody else is serving, right? But it's a serving partnership, servitude. How did I say it? Servant partnership. There we go. So in the partnership, you work with each other. You work alongside each other. So I think the writer of The Little Prince, de Saint-Exupéry, he said it very nicely. He actually said, I think love is not looking at each other, but looking outward together in the same direction. So that's, I think, very close to the biblical interpretation of marriage, which is, yes, you look out in the same direction together alongside each other, but you also serve each other. So it's not one person always serves the other person. It's both of them serving each other. And let me give you an example of serving, I guess, from my own marriage. And this will relate to how actually marriage has changed me, and I will talk about that next. But my husband really loves fishing. He's an outdoor person. Even though he grew up in the city, there is something that just draws him into nature. He's like a wild man. He wants to go fishing. He wants to go hunting. He likes camping and all that stuff. Now I'm like a cat. I'm like an indoor cat, okay? I like staying at home. I can stay at home all day and feel perfectly fine. Just maybe open the window once in a while, just breathe some fresh air and then close the window and be perfectly fine. I don't actually have to go outside. And a lot of times in the past, especially, going out to camp and do all that stuff felt like a chore. I would rather just stay at home, just be on the computer, or I don't know, watch TV, or even just read a book. Just chill at home and not have to worry about mosquitoes and dirt and where am I gonna sleep and rocks and all that stuff, But when I got married, I knew that he liked that stuff, and when we were dating, we did go fishing here and there, but I didn't realize, I didn't even know how much he loves fishing. Once we got married, that's where it completely solidified for me. I'm like, okay, So like I'm his number one love, but his number 1.2 love is fishing. And I was like, okay, like he loves fish and sometimes he loves fish more than me. Once I found that out and I actually asked him, it's kind of a weird question to ask, but I think for Christians, it's not actually that weird to ask each other. But like, I knew that the concept, you know, of serving each other, but I just didn't know really how to serve him, I guess, how to help him, what to do. So I just like asked him, how can I help you? How can I serve you? What can I do to make you like feel better and to make you feel more appreciated or loved and whatnot? And he was like, just go fishing with me. Just come with me. I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound too difficult, but sure. But even though it didn't sound that difficult, it actually was a little bit of a sacrifice for me just because I had to get used to it. Like, I wasn't used to going fishing every single day. Like, I'm still kind of not very used to it. At one point, actually, I got used to it when we literally went every single day when we lived in the States. But then once we moved to Korea, it's a lot harder to fish here. So we tried, but just traveling so long, such distances, like every day is just not possible. So we kind of stopped fishing every day, and now we just go here and there whenever we have like a vacation or something, but you really can't afford going to places anymore because most places here actually are prohibited from fishing. So it's kind of sucks. But yeah, that was my way of serving him, just coming with him to fish. And just, you know, we would go some caught fishing on the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia, just throw out some corn, some chum, you know, and then you just sit there and there's the sun and the sky and the water. And actually it was pretty nice. I fell asleep many times and had a really good nap out in the open. And other times we would go, casting. So very active fishing, moving around, casting many times for multiple hours. And, you know, at first it was kind of difficult for me. But I was like, this is what makes him happy. This is what he likes to do. And so I learned not just to, you know, go with him, but also actually enjoy it myself. I took the time to learn how to tie knots, what bait to use, what different kinds of, you know, cranks and lures and all that stuff, jigs. I learned about that so that I could do it on my own, so that it's not like he's constantly assisting me or I'm just following him around like a puppy or something. Like, I actually do my part. And once I actually learned to do it myself, it became pretty fun because at that point it's like hunting, right? It's like trying to outsmart this fish. And yeah, it was pretty fun. And then we actually went to many different places that I'd never been to before just because of fishing. And so it became a common experience that we would share with each other, even though at first I was like, okay, do I really have to do this? But once I actually learned, it became fun for me. And this is something actually that relates to what I wanted to talk about that I mentioned earlier in the video. And I know that my video is a little bit all over the place because I think this is a very complex topic and I'm just sharing my thoughts here and there. So I might make another video just talking about things that I don't mention here. But yeah, something that I want to talk about next was what I personally believe are actually advantages of marrying younger, marrying earlier. So these days, I'm sure many of you know, and that is, I think, a lot more common in the Western world. The cat demands the entrance. Hello, everybody. She actually doesn't mind. Kind of weird. I think she was just checking if I was alive. So as I was saying, in many parts of the world, especially in the Western world, I think, but also in many places in Asia, certainly in Korea, it's very common to not get married in your 20s or even your 30s, but go all the way to your 40s or late 30s. And I guess the thought behind it, the thought process behind it is that you need to establish yourself. There's this, I think, misconception about marriage is that you need to have your life together before you can get married. And I understand where that is coming from. It's like, if you're going to assume one of the greatest responsibilities in your life, you need to make sure you take care of other things in your life first, and then get ready for marriage and then actually commit. And while I understand that, I think people approach it as like a prerequisite, and it really isn't a prerequisite for you to have higher education to get married. It's not a prerequisite for you to have an apartment to get married. It's not a prerequisite even to like have a solid job yet to get married. as weird as it sounds maybe to you, because maybe people have been telling you that, oh, you need a stable job, you need this and that, you can't get married, you're not ready. And, like, I understand where that is coming from, but here's what I personally think about this. So my husband and I, when we got married, he was still in school and I was still in grad school too. So when we got married, we weren't like established, if that's the word I'm gonna use, like established as in like I'm graduated, I have my diplomas, my degrees, I have my certifications, whatever, I have my apartment, I have my job, I have my car. Okay, I'm ready to get married now. We literally had nothing, okay? And we got a lot of help from our families, but when we decided to spend the rest of our lives together, we realized that, instead of waiting however many years for I don't know exactly what, we will commit now and then do it together. We will establish ourselves together. We will grow together. We will make mistakes together, and we will learn from them together. And because we're doing it when we're younger, it makes it actually a lot easier to adapt to each other. You know how there's a saying, old habits die hard? Like, as you get older and older, you do actually get into kind of a pattern that you get used to, and it's a lot harder to change it once you are, so to say, ready to get married. And those patterns can really get in the way of either even starting a marriage or keeping it together, because at that point, like, you're just so used to doing everything on your own, it'll be a lot harder for you to adapt to the other person. But because we're doing it while we're still fairly young, like, we don't really have those kinds of really old habits that are really ingrained in us. So we change them and we adapt to each other. In that sense, getting married younger is actually easier. And for me, it's not like I married him because he has this cool, gorgeous apartment in this beautiful place with a luxurious car and lots of money. I married him when he had nothing. And even if he were to acquire those things later, like, we will do it together. This is not the reason why I married him. And I think that is also very reassuring for both partners, is that, well, we both committed to each other when we were literally nobody, had nothing, and still made it work. And if people are to climb higher, right, and they do it together, then I think it's a very rewarding experience. And another advantage for us in getting married so young is that we are a lot more willing to take risks because we can still afford them. We can still afford failure. I'm not saying that once you reach a certain age, you can't fail anymore. But I think failing when you're older is a lot tougher to climb out of or recover from, as opposed to when you're younger, when you still have lots of years ahead of you, or you're still young and your mentality just recovers a lot more quickly, or, you're not set in a specific pattern yet. And so for you to find that place of establishment, you do need to take risks. And a lot of times, it's not going to work and you're just going to have to try again. And I think resilience really comes a lot easier when you're younger. So, it's the same for us. Like, we're taking different risks or thinking about different risks and what the consequences could be and how can we recover from them. And I think when you're younger, first of all, you're a lot more likely to take risks when you're younger. But also, we know that if we are to face any kind of failure or any kind of negative consequences, we have the ability to overcome them. It's not too daunting or just straight up impossible. So yeah, that's what I think about marrying young. I don't think you absolutely need this prerequisite of establishment and financial stability or whatnot to get married. I do think that growing together and taking risks together is a good thing when you're younger. And also, I think when you marry younger, you're a lot more adaptable and you don't have any set habits in you. So it's a lot easier for you to adapt to the other person. And so now that I've talked about what the world says about marriage, what I think about marriage, and the principles behind my marriage, and what I think about marrying young, I want to talk about how marriage has changed me. So quite obviously, I've changed a lot of my interests and hobbies. Even League of Legends, I never played those games before. I probably would never even want to play these games before I married my husband. because like if somebody told me, hey, would you like to play with like 9 other people and four of them are on your team and you guys can never agree on anything, and yeah, every time you make a mistake they're going to flame you, and when you do very well they're not going to say anything, I'll be like, no, I don't want to play that game. But my husband introduced me to League of Legends and then showed me. I really like his approach. He's pretty chill, but he also doesn't like to play competitively. He just likes to play for fun. So, I learn a lot from him. And then, yeah, now I have a YouTube channel where I do League of Legends content. Fishing, of course. Learn to fish and enjoy it. A bunch of old K-pop from like 2008 or 7 or something. I mean, the list is pretty long. I've also become a lot more open to new ideas and thinking outside the box. I used to operate in a certain way that always worked for me. And like, because I was pretty successful at school and the work that I did at that time, I felt like I had it down. I knew what I was doing. But then once I got married and then started discovering kind of new ways of thinking and approaching things, I realized that maybe before that I did a lot of things kind of inefficiently or in like set ways. I just like, I don't know why I did them that way. I just did them because like that's the way I thought that I was supposed to do them. But there were other ways to do things. And then once I realized that, then I was like, oh, okay. And then after that, I became a lot more open to new ideas. Even, doing YouTube. I would never think of doing YouTube before I got married because I would never want to put my face out there for anything. I'm one of those people that would put like my profile picture as like a cat or something. I would never put my face anywhere. But here I am a few years later, just like talking about my marriage on camera with my face fully showing. So like clearly something changed, and I think it's that risk taking. I used to be kind of more of on the safe side, but my husband is definitely a risk taker. And like at first it was like, whoa, like hold on a sec. But like now I'm like, okay, sure, let's go, let's try. So I don't know how long I will have this YouTube or how, it could just all end tomorrow. But while I do have it, I am enjoying the process and I guess the adventure that comes with it. And finally recognizing my own selfishness and putting someone else's needs first. So it's not like I never put anyone else's needs first because I have a pretty big family and we're very close and we look out for each other. We got each other's back. But at the same time, I think before that, I kind of just did everything my own way. It was never like my way or the highway, but in many ways, sometimes it kind of was like that. I was pretty selfish, actually. But I never thought that I was selfish until I got married and I was with the same person almost like 24/7, except for the times when he would go to work and I would go to work, or he would go to school, I would go to school. But like we would live with each other and just be stuck with each other. And that's where I learned a lot of the selfish things that I did that I did not want to admit that were selfish, but they actually were. And it always takes another person to point it out for you. And no one else, not even your own family, is going to point that out for you, but your spouse will. Of course, that's exactly what happened. It took some time for me to humble myself to the point of being able to say, okay, yes, I did something wrong, and this is just my selfish way of doing things. Please help me fix it. I don't think I am personally capable of just fixing my own selfish habits or fixing myself all of a sudden now that I'm married. I don't think it's possible, at least for me. I don't know about you. Maybe you can do it, but I certainly can't. So yeah, I did a lot of praying, also talking with my husband, with my dad, who's also a pastor. So it took a lot of work, I think, but slowly but surely, and I'm still working on it, but slowly but surely it's been working, and I've been changing a lot. And this is something that I started with this video and that I want to end with, is that people say you should marry someone who will not change you, who will not force you to change. But that just couldn't be farther from the truth. You want to marry someone with whom you will change. Someone who will make you a better person, who will benefit from you and you will benefit from them. You will both change. Many times people say, oh, I married someone and now like 10 years later, I feel like I married someone someone else. Like, I'm married to a person who is completely different from the one that I married in the beginning. And it's true. And actually, that's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to change each other. And if you don't change, if you keep in your stubborn ways and you don't adapt to the other person, then I think it's going to be pretty difficult. But if you change, and you do change, and you should change, hopefully for the better, then that makes marriage all the more beneficial, not just for you, but also for the other person and actually people around you, because they realize that, oh, you're different. You're not as stubborn as you used to be, or you don't do that one thing anymore that used to annoy everyone, but no one said anything. That kind of stuff is actually pretty good. It's a very positive thing. And there is something that one Christian writer says in his book called The Meaning of Marriage, and his name is Tim Keller. He's a very, very well-known scholar and pastor, and he's also a writer. Anyway, something that he says, something that he says in his book is that you always marry the wrong person. So people ask, how do I know it's the one? How do I know it's the right person? Thing is, because you will change. Both of you will change. The person you marry is not going to be the same in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. They're going to be a different person. So yeah, you always marry the wrong person because you don't know what they're going to be like. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't get married. It doesn't mean that, oh, well, that was the wrong decision. Oh, we're too different. We can't work it out anymore. You can. You can. There is a way. And what needs to happen first is humbling yourself. And if it truly is a marriage where you're both equals, then you will work it out. It will work. It has worked for me so far, and we're continuing working on it together. And I can definitely say for sure is that the amount of conflict that happens now is like, I don't know, 10 times less than it used to be like a year ago. A year ago, we used to like fight over like every little thing. But now it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm sure in 10 years, like, it's gonna get even easier. And so to conclude this video, here's basically everything that I just spewed out onto you in this video, in this very messy vlog. Marriage is a skill that needs to be taught well, and you actually have the agency of learning how to do it. And it's not that bad. You shouldn't be afraid of it. I don't think you should be afraid of it. It's fun. It's a commitment. And but it's a good commitment, and it's a commitment worth making. And finally, what makes it work for us is we approach it biblically. We both have the same mindset, and we work on serving each other as partners. That is the philosophy that we have behind our marriage, and that's what makes it work. Has made it work so far. Anyways, guys, that's it for this video. How about you? Are you married? Are you thinking about marrying? What do you think about this topic? What are your general concerns, maybe, or something that you heard, or maybe something that you liked in this video that I shared? Please let me know in the comments. I would love to know. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. This was Zoya, the Russian Korean. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.